Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today is the Petalburg Razors going up against the Kitakami Rogues inside of our PokeType League TCG Elimination Final. Whoever loses this matchup, as we have a look at the tail of the tape, their season will be over and they will become the first member of the A2 Victory Road Elite Four. But it is the Petalburg Razors coming in 4th. They got the wooden crown last season, but it was the Kitakami Rogues who took 9th last season, so both these sides on their redemption arc. With that said, let us know in the comments below who you think's going to win this matchup. Will it be the Colorless decks? Will it be the Darkness decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this match, having flipped heads, it is the Bidoof in the active spot from that Hall of Origin deck for the Petalburg Razors. It's the 2 Darkrai's being laid out for the Kitakami Rogues from their Endless Nightmare deck. Now, this is not our usual best of 3 series. You have to win a game with each of your 3 decks to move on inside Victory Road in the PokeType League TCG. The Razors are going to play their Professor's Research. They get the Giant Cape, they get the Bidoof. Now, they've got 2 Porygon Z's in hand, they've got the Porygon 2, and they've got the Rocky Helmet. They do move that second Bidoof onto the bench, as it's 2 Bidoofs up against 2 Darkrai's at the moment. The Rogues do pull their Rocky Helmet, and they are going to play their Pokeball. They've got the Cyrus and the Arbok in hand, and now they've got the Ekans as well, so they're immediately going to get that onto the bench, and they are going to get a first of 3 required energy onto that active Darkrai. But these 2 sides have improved drastically since Season A1, and they want to run this all the way to the Champions game, but they will have to run the gauntlet. They cannot afford to lose this series, as the Petalburg Razors do pull the Bibarel. They immediately get that online. It has the same energy required as the Bidoof, so they get a first of 2 required onto the Bibarel, and it is going to be the Spiritomb now being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, immediately taking that last slot on the bench for this Endless Nightmare deck, and they get the Rocky Helmet onto the Darkrai. They want to make the Razors reluctant to go on the offensive, and they're going to get energy onto the Ekans instead of the Darkrai. They have seemingly switched their focus from the Darkrai to having the Arbok now, as the Razors, they do pull the Porygon, so they've got the whole Porygon Z line in hand, and they do get energy onto the Bibarel, who can go with this rolling tackle, 60 damage onto the Darkrai. It only has 50 health remaining, but with that Rocky Helmet, it does do 20 damage back to the Bibarel, as it comes back over to the Rogues, who do pull the Grafaiai. Now, whoever wins this series, they will move on to face the Turffield Ebonies, who did lose their previous game in the qualifying final. They had moved on to that minor semi-final. As the Pokeball that was pulled for the Razors, they play that, and they immediately get the second Porygon in hand, as they get the Porygon 2 online, and they are going to start setting that up. The Porygon Z does require 3 energies, but with that Buggy Beam, it can generate random energy in the energy zone of this Endless Nightmare deck, and the Razors do get that Rocky Helmet onto the Bibarel, continuing with the rolling tackle. They are going to take the Darkrai off the board, and the Razors take the first point in game 1. Now, we could actually only have 3 games if a team clean sweeps the opposing side, but we can go as far as 5. Unless we get a tie, then we could actually go further, as the Rogues pull their second Spiritomb, but they get a 3rd energy onto the Arbok. They can go with this Venom's Fang, 70 damage. They are going to move Bibarel into the discard pile. They don't care about that poisoning, but they do have to contend with that Rocky Helmet recoil damage. Now, both sides have taken 1 point in this game 1. They want the opening game just to have that bit of control, get the first deck over the line. Like we said, you need all 3 decks to win, to move on in this series. It is the Dawn being pulled for the Razors. They get a second energy onto the Porygon 2, and they are going to get the Giant Cape onto the Porygon 2 as well, because that Porygon 2 would not have outlasted that Venomous Fang plus the poisoning that it would receive, but they're going to keep the Porygon 2 online. They do go with the Sharpen, 30 damage onto the Arbok, as the Professor's Research is pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. They're going to play that immediately. They're going to get 2 cards out of their deck, being the Shroodle and the Team Rocket Grunt. Now, they can't play the Team Rocket Grunt on this turn. They've already used that Professor's Research supporter card, but they get that Shroodle onto the bench. They want their Grafaiai with that Poisonous Coating online on the next turn, and they get an energy onto the Shroodle, but the Venomous Fang, 70 damage onto the Porygon 2, plus the poisoning, doing the additional 10. Because of that Giant Cape, it is still in this match. The Razors do pull the Pokeball. They are going to get another basic Pokemon out of their deck, and it is going to be the Arceus of the Hall of Origin, but it's the Porygon Z coming online, curing the Porygon 2 of that poisoning. They were thinking a step ahead with that poisoning here, and 1 more energy onto this Porygon Z. This Buggy Beam has been set up. before they go for the Buggy Beam, they do move the Porygon, that second Porygon there, onto that final bench spot, but there it is, the Buggy Beam, taking the Arbok off the board. They get their second point, and it's going to be a Psychic type energy being generated next for the Kitakami Rogues. This is not good for them, having that Porygon Z set up on the opposition. They need some darkness energies on their Pokemon here, as they're going to think about what they're doing. The Spiritomb, it can use any type of energy to go on the offensive, but it will not be able to outlast the hit from the Porygon Z, and they're running out of time. They choose to go with the Darkrai, who has 110 health. They get the Giant Cape as well. They've got that Team Rocket Grunt in hand. If they can get 3 successful coin flips, that Porygon Z will lose all of its energy, but they have to all be heads in a row. As soon as they get a Tails, that Team Rocket Grunt will stop, but first they're going for the poison coating from that Grafire that's now online, and they do get the poison status condition onto the Porygon Z, and they are going to use the Team Rocket Grunt again. These coin flips, they need the heads. They get 1. This is a good start. They get 2. They get 2 heads. That's still 2 energy here off of the Porygon Z. This will buy the Kitakami Rogues a bit of time, as they've got that Psychic energy on the Darkrai. They need 2 darkness energies on top of that to ensure it can go for this Dark Void, but the Petalburg Razors are going to pull that Celestic Town Elder. They can get a basic Pokemon, a random basic Pokemon out of their discard pile with that, but it's only the Bidoof that is in their discard pile that's a basic Pokemon. They get a second energy onto the Porygon Z. They're willing to let it sit with this poisoning in the active spot. And with that, they do finish their turn. They're going to send it back over to the Endless Nightmare deck, who pull their second Ekans here. And they need to think about how they want to approach this. They can't retreat the Darkrai. It's a 2 energy retreat cost unless they choose to get this second dark energy onto it, the darkness energy, sorry. But still, that Porygon Z of the Razors is going to be able to be set up on this turn. The Rogues have ended their turn. It comes back over to the Razors. They get their Porygon 2. They can get 2 Porygon Z lines set up here. But first, they get that third energy back onto the active Porygon Z. The Buggy Beam will do 80 damage to the Darkrai. They need it to be a darkness energy that's generated here. And it's going to be a metal energy. This is terrible for the Rogues. This is not at all what they needed. As they pull their second Shroodle, they're looking at their in-hand Spiritomb. They've still got 1 on the bench, but they are limited with their options. That Buggy Beam does 80 damage. The only Pokemon of theirs that can outlast that is the Grafire, who has 90 health. They're going through their hand. They do have the Giant Cape as well. They're going to retreat the Darkrai. They're going to give up one of the darkness energies as well. I don't think they care. I think they know that they're limited on their options. They're just trying to outlast the Porygon Z here, it seems, as the Razors pull their second Bibarel. And they have time to think about how they want to approach this. They are going to get an energy onto that Porygon. No, they're going with the Bidoof getting an energy here. They're going with the Bidoof play, which we haven't seen much of from. But that Porygon Z with the Buggy Beam, 80 damage onto the Grafire, and they've generated another metal energy for the Kitakami Rogues, who do pull their second Cyrus into their hand. Now they could get a Giant Cape onto the Spiritombs here, but they're opting against that. And that could be a crucial error. They could have gone for that. They could have retreated the Grafire for a 1 retreat cost. They send it over to the Razors here, and this is going to allow the Razors to finish off the Grafire. Was that an error by this Endless Nightmare deck? Because this is going to get the Hall of Origin deck over the line, so they are 1 ahead in this series as they look for all 3 of their decks to win in this contest. But as we have a field reset, if you're enjoying what you see, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the action of the PokeType League TCG Season A2, especially whilst we're here in Victory Road. But it is the Razors this time going with their Bombardment deck up against the Galactic Boss deck. They can pick any of their decks that have not won a match here, and it is the Benaries online for the Razors. It's the Poochyena in the active spot for the Kitakami Rogues. Now the Razors are going first, and already they've pulled the Lopunny. They've got the Ambipom and the Rocky Helmet, but they're playing this Professor's Research, so they are going to get 2 more cards. They get the Team Rocket Grunt, they get the second Ambipom, but no Apom just yet. They do put the Rocky Helmet onto that active Benary with the Pound that does 20. They want this Poochyena to be reluctant to go on the offensive as the Rogues pull the Zubat. They're going to play their own Pokeball, but they've got their own Professor's Research as well. They pull the Murkrow, they've got 2 Crobats in hand. They want the Golbats, they want the Mightyenas as well. They get the Golbat, which is great. They get a Cyrus as well. If they can get a Honchkrow, that can target Pokemon that are on the bench. They get the Zubat and the Murkrow onto their bench as well, whilst the Poochyena does get a first energy, and they are going for the bite. It will do 20 damage to the Baneri, bringing it down to 30 health, but the Baneri with the Rocky Helmet does 20 damage back to that Poochyena. And the Razors pull their second Lopunny, so they have the choice. The Jump Kick does 20 to the opposing Pokemon, but it can also do 20 to one of the benched Pokemon, and that is the one they get online. The Hop-In Shot Lopunny that does 30 damage to the active Pokemon is on the bench. Now they only require 1 energy each, and they've gotten an energy onto the benched Lopunny. That's a very interesting choice here from the Razors. Did they just rush their decision, as they do get the tails from that Team Rocket Grunt? They can't go on the offensive here. They need to slow things down. They have got that first game win. They want to get the 2-game lead, as the Professor's research from the Rogues is going to get them the Mightyena plus the Giant Cape. The Mightyena is online. It only requires 1 more energy, but so is the Golbat. Now the Golbat and Crobat, they only require a single energy to go on the offensive. The Giant Cape placed onto the Mightyena as well, boosting its health up to 90, and with this Darkness Fang, it can do 60 damage. Lopunny will still have 10 health remaining. But we can't help but question why they didn't put an energy onto that active Lopunny. The Razors and this Bombardment deck, they only require 1 energy on all their Pokemon except for the Snorlax, as they do pull the Barrier, who sets up perfectly with that Snorlax. It is the Jump Kick now from this Lopunny that is online, and they can target a bench Pokemon. They're going with the Golbat, so 20 damage here onto the Golbat, 20 damage onto the Mightyena, and again we have to question why they didn't get an energy onto that active Lopunny. It is the Honchkrow pulled by the Rogues as well. The Crobat is online, and they're hovering that energy over the Crobat, which is a questionable choice, because they could have done it for the Honchkrow and it would have been ready for the next turn if they so chose to use it. But this is why. It's because they're retreating the Mightyena, using 1 energy for that retreat cost immediately with the Darkness Fang. They don't want to deal with the Lopunny, but they didn't want the recoil damage onto the Mightyena either. And with that first Lopunny is taken into the discard pile, and the Rogues and this Galactic Boss deck do get the first point on the board. Now the Razors moving that Lopunny into the active spot. Now they get an Apom that they do get an energy onto. They can get an Ambipom on the next turn ready. The Hop-In Shot is going to get 30 damage onto the Crobat, and this is why they retreated the Mightyena, dig the Rogues, as they pulled their second Zubat. Now they're going to want that second Golbat so they can have 2 Crobats online. And the crucial thing with the Crobat as well is it has a 0 energy retreat cost, as they get an energy onto the Honchkrow, 50 damage onto that active Lopunny. It comes back over to the Razors. They pull their second Apom. They're starting to get the cards they need now. They don't want it to be too little too late. As they get an energy onto the second Apom, they are going to get an Ambipom online, who only requires 1 energy for the double hit. 2 coin flips, each heads 40 damage. It can do 80 damage, and they only need 1 to take down this Crobat, as they've moved the Ambipom into the active spot, but they get 2 tails, so the Crobat is safe in the active spot here. And again, it has a 0 energy retreat cost as they pull the Golbat, the Honchkrow. Again, 50 damage. It can target any Pokemon on the opposing side, including that Lopunny, who only has 50 health remaining. The Rogues retreat the Crobat, and with this skill dive, we have to think they're surely going to target the Lopunny to get their second point, and that they do. They are in full control here in Game 2 with this Galactic Boss deck. They're trying to level the playing field with 1 deck win apiece. As the Razors pull their Professor's Research, they're going to play that immediately, getting another 2 cards. It's the Giant Cape and the Snorlax being pulled. The Barrier can bring down the attack cost of that Collapse down by 2, so then it's only 2 energy on the Snorlax needed. The Ambipom cannot do enough to the Honchkrow to take it off the board. They need 2 heads still. They get 1. They only get 1, so it is going to bring the Honchkrow down to only 60 health remaining. But this is fantastic for the Rogues. They have options. They've pulled the Mightyena as well. They can start setting up their second Crobat, as the first Crobat only has 40 health remaining. They get the Golbat online, and with this skill dive, now they're starting to target that active Ambipom, bringing it down to 40 health. They don't want to give the Razors any chance to go on the offensive. They do pull a Pokeball. They're going to play that immediately here, and they get the second Snorlax here. And that is from the promo set A, as they were eligible in Season A2 that also used the decks from Spacetime, Smackdown, Triumphant Light, and Shining Revelry. But it's the second energy on the Snorlax. They retreat the Ambipom and they're going to play the Barrier. They don't want to have to contend with this Honchkrow. They go for the Collapse, and Honchkrow is moved off into the discard pile as the Razors do get their first point here in Game 2, which is fantastic for them, is what we would be saying. But unbeknownst to them, there is a Cyrus in hand of this Galactic boss deck. They can drag a Pokemon that has taken damage into the active spot. That Snorlax is asleep, and it is left asleep after that Tails flip. The Poochyena is pulled, and they immediately just play the Cyrus. They're going straight for the win here. They drag that Ambipom back into the active spot, and with this Darkness Fang, this Galactic boss deck is going to take Game 2 over this Bombardment deck. So both sides have got one deck in the clear. They need their other two to win to advance to the minor semi-final, as we have another table reset. And again, it is the Razors flipping heads. This time they are again going to be using the Bombardment deck, and they will be going up against the Endless Nightmare deck. They're both using their two decks that have lost, as it is the Baneri in the active spot, the Snorlax on the bench, the Shroodle in the active spot for the Rogues, and they've got the Grafaiai in hand. Now both sides have got a Professor's Research, so they will surely very quickly get another two cards out of their deck. The Ambipom being pulled for the Razors. They've also got the Fan Rotom in hand, plus the Rocky Helmet as they play that Professor's Research. They are going to get the Apom. They get the second Baneri as well, and they immediately move the Apom onto the bench, plus getting that Rocky Helmet onto the Baneri, because that Shroodle with that Gnaw will do 20 damage, but as we've seen previously happen, that Rocky Helmet will do 20 damage back to it. The Rogues pull the Pokeball, so they play that before the Professor's Research, guaranteed to get a basic Pokemon, being the Ekans, and they've got the Arbok in hand as they play that Professor's Research here, getting the Team Rocket Grunt plus the Darkrai, another basic Pokemon they can move onto the bench. The Ekans is online, and that Shroodle is going to get its first energy, but will they go for the Gnaw? They've got the Giant Cape. They do put that onto it, the Pokemon tool here. Now Pokemon can only have one Pokemon tool attached at a time, and they are going to go for the Gnaw, trying to offset the Rocky Helmet with that Giant Cape, bringing the Baneri down to only 30 health. Now the Razors pull their Professor's Research, their second one, so they can get another two cards out of this deck. They are going to get a Pokeball. They get the Fan Rotom, so no Lopunny Insight, which is great for the Rogues because they've got that Grafaiai in hand, which is a ridiculously fun name to say, I might add. As the Ambipom is online, the Razors play the Pokeball. They get their second Apom here, which means there's still one Snorlax inside that deck. And they do get an energy onto the Baneri that can go for the Pound. This will bring the Shroodle down to having only 40 health remaining. But as we said, that Grafaiai in hand for the Rogues, who pull another Pokeball. So they're going to get another basic Pokemon out of their deck. And this time it's going to be the second Shroodle that they're able to pull here. There are also, sorry, as I try to get that out, the Spiritombs in this deck that we've seen previously, the Arbok's online, and so is the Grafaiai, who does get its second energy. It can go for the Poison Coating, but I don't think that's what they're concerned with. They just want to go for the Bite and get the quick point here in Game 3 by taking that Baneri out into the discard pile. They do have to contend with the Rocky Helmet damage, but the Grafaiai still has 50 health remaining. Now the Razors, they can move the Ambipom, and that is exactly what they're going to do. No time wasted. They leave that Snorlax on the bench, but they've just pulled the Barrier as well. We've seen the Barriers come into play, reducing that attack cost, but the Ambipom only requires one energy. They need both heads from that coin flip for the double hit. Here we go, they've got the Apom online on the bench as well, but here is that first coin flip. They get a Tails, which is great for the Rogues. They get two Tails, even better for the Rogues, because Grafaiai is safe with 50 health still remaining. And we did mention the Spiritombs, as one of them is pulled for the Rogues. They immediately get that onto the bench. It is the Confused Ray Spiritomb, but they're starting to set up the Arbok here. They do go for the Poison Coating onto the Ambipom. They need to flip the heads, and they flip the tails, so the Ambipom is going to avoid that for the time being. But the second Shroodle is brought online. They're clearly hoping they pull another Grafaiai so they can boost their chances of the Poison Coating. 40 damage onto the Ambipom as it comes back over to the Razors. They get their Giant Cape here. They want to try and boost the health surely of that Ambipom, but first they're going to get an energy onto the Snorlax, and there is the Giant Cape being placed onto the Ambipom here, taking its health back up to 70, which means even if it does get poisoned in the next turn, it will still be safe. But first, the double hit. They get a heads, They only get one, and Grafaiai hangs on with 10 health remaining. This is great for the Rogues with those coin flips going their way. They do pull the Cyrus. They've still got a Team Rocket Grunt in hand. They must be saving that for the Snorlax. Again, going for this poison coating though. This time they need to flip the heads, and again they flip the tails. The Razors getting the coin flip their way this time, but it is the Arbok with its second energy for that Venomous Fang. The bite here, bringing that Ambipom down to only 30 health remaining, but the Grafaiai, a very easy target, but that's if the Razors can flip aheads with these double kicks. Sorry, not double kicks, double hits. The Lopunny pulled for the Razors as Baneri is moved into that bench slot, and here we go. The 2 coin flips, they just need 1, they get a Tails. They get 2 Tails, and again, the Rogues and this Grafaiai still left in place, but not just that. Now Ambipom is an easy target for the Grafaiai. And they can get energy onto the Arbok, but instead they're going to get it onto that second Shroodle that's on the bench, just in case they clearly pull the Grafaiai, which is what they're after. The bite from this active Grafaiai, though, takes the Ambipom off the board, and the Rogues have their second point. They're looking to take 2 games in a row in this elimination final. However, it is the Snorlax now moved into the active spot. The second Lopunny has been pulled for this bombardment deck. They can use that Barry straight away as well. They are going to get a third energy onto the Snorlax, but still they're going to play the Barry because they want to get this Grafaiai off the board. They want to get a point here, and they go with the collapse. Now Snorlax will fall asleep. That is not what they need. They will have an opportunity for it to wake up before it gets back to them here. They get their first point. Grafaiai in the discard pile, but the Rogues are going to move the Arbok into the active spot. The Razors with their coin flip, they get the head, so Snorlax is already awake. That is perfect for them, but the Rogues, they can get the poisoning onto the Snorlax as they do pull their second Darkrai here. They've also got that Team Rocket Grunt in hand, and that is what they're going to play. They want to get the energies off the Snorlax. They need to flip heads, and they need them continuously, but they get a Tails straight away. This is not good for the Rogues here. But this Venomous Fang, 70 damage onto the Snorlax, halving its health plus the poisoning, bringing it down to only 60 health remaining. The Razors, they do pull their second Snorlax. They don't want to drop another point to the Kitakami Rogues. And it is a 4th energy onto the Snorlax. This Snorlax won't be able to outlast a hit from the Arbok. They get 100 damage onto it. They're clearly willing to give up this game too, it seems, because they see no other option, but a very quick decision comes back over to the Rogues. They can take this Snorlax off the board with the Venomous Fang, and they will take game 3. One more win from the Rogues. They will have that Galactic admin deck that we have not seen yet. That is the last deck they need to get a victory here to move on to face the Turffield Ebonies in the minor semi-final. And with another table reset, it is again the Petalburg Razors that are flipping ahead, so again they're going first, but this time they're changing things up. They're going with the Fast Days deck, and they've already got the Staraptor line in hand, moving the Starly onto the bench. It's the Krogunk from this Galactic admin deck onto their active spot. I believe I said bench for the Starly, but it's in the active spot. There's no bench slots being taken yet, but the Razors have a Professor's Research in hand. They've got the 2 Wigglytuffs with those comforting songs. The Professor's Research provides the second Starly. It provides a Chatot as well. They are going to move the Starly onto the bench correctly this time. It is the Chatot on the bench as well, as they're having a look at their Staravia. They do send it over to the Rogues. The Rogues are going to pull the Drapion. They've got the Toxicroak and the Skuntank also in hand. They get the Stunky from their Team Galactic Grunts there. That does allow them to get a Stunky or a Krogunk out of their deck, but with this beat from the Krogunk, 1 energy, 20 damage onto the Starly, already trying to chip away at its health as it comes over to the Razors. They get their second Staravia. Now they are going to move that Wing Attack Energy Staravia, 1 energy, into the active spot. It can do 30 damage. They move the second Staravia onto the bench with that Wing Attack that requires 2 energy. And with this active Staravia, it can do 30 damage here to the Krogunk. Comes back over to the Rogues though. They get their second Drapion. And they've got that Krogunk in the active spot, but they've got the group beatdown Toxicroak. It does get a coin flip for every Pokemon they have online. And they've only got 2 at the moment. If they had 4, they'd get 4 coin flips, but because they've only got 2, they get 2 coin flips. For every heads, it does 40 damage. They need both to take the Staravia off the board. They get a Tails. They get 2 tails. Now it's the Rogues flipping the tails for its offenses, and Staravia is safe for this turn, which is great for the Razors because they pulled their second Chatot, but they can get the Staraptor online if they so choose. But this Staraptor with the Brave Bird does require 3 energy. It does do 130 damage though, so they can take any of the Rogues Pokemon off the table immediately. Even that Drapion 120 health cannot outlast the hit. They're going to risk keeping the Staravia though, as it gets a second energy with this wing attack only requiring 1. They do go for that Krogunk as the Rogues pull their second Stunky, and they go to use the Team Rocket Grunt. They want to get the energy off this active Staravia, but again, they get a tail, so the energy is safe on the Staravia. They need to flip at least 2 out of the 3 potential heads with this group beatdown. They get 1, they get 2, they get a tails, but that does not matter because they have taken the Staravia off the board. The Razors played it risky and it did not pay off, as this Galactic Admin deck takes the first point in what they are hoping is the last game of this series. Now the Razors move the Chatot into the active spot. They pull the Cyclizar and they're thinking of moving that onto a bench position. They do get an energy onto the Chatot with this Fury attack. It only requires 1 energy. The Staraptor also online now. It is a coin flip. 3 coin flips for every heads. It does 20 damage. They only need 2 to take off this Toxicroak. They get 1. They need 1 more. They get a Tails. They get a second Tails. This is good for the Rogues. The Toxicroak still safe. Has 10 health remaining. Now it does again need 2 heads to take off this Chatot here to get their second point. The second Skuntank is online as well with that Poison Gas that can do 50 damage. It does require 2 energy as each of them have 1 energy each, but they do poison the opposing Pokemon. They're going for the group beatdown again. They get 1 heads. They get a Tails. They get a second Tails. The Razors able to hold on with this Chatot. It buys them a little bit of time here. And they're going to pull the Jigglypuff. They can start getting ready for these Wigglytuffs with these comforting songs to come online. They can heal 20 damage from the active Pokemon, and that Brave Bird does do recoil damage to the Staraptor. Another Fury attack. They get a Tails. They get a second Tails. They get the 1 heads that are needed on the 3rd coin flip, and that Toxicroak is taken off the board of the Rogues, so the Razors get their first point in this game 4. However, the Rogues are going to move a Skuntank into the active spot. They do pull their second Krogunk now, and it's a group beatdown Krogunk, but it only does 20 damage when it's on the offensive, as the Skuntank with the Poison Gas and easy discard movement of that Chatot there as the Rogues get their second point here. They need 1 more point to win the series and move on to the minor semi-final inside of Victory Road of Season A2 of the PokeType League TCG. That is a mouthful, but it's actually quite easier to say than I would have imagined, as the Chatot again moved into the active spot for the Razors. They know it can outlast at least 1 hit from the Skuntank. They must be hoping for the Barry. They do get energy onto the Chatot as the second Jigglypuff is pulled as well. They do get a heads. They get 2. They get 2 out of 3, so 40 damage onto this Skuntank. They're trying to hold on desperately here. They want 2 Wigglytuffs online because they can use 2 comforting songs as well, but the Rogues have just pulled a Team Rocket Grunt. They could try and hold this Chatot in place and cause a bit of disruption for this Fast Days deck. They need to flip 1 heads, and they get it as well, which means that Chatot has 0 energy on it now, and it is a 1 energy retreat cost. They get a second energy onto the bench Skuntank, and another Poison Gas, 1 more Poison Gas, and they will get their 3rd point. Chatot has 10 health remaining. This is crucial, but the Razors have pulled the Barry. The Barry has been pulled for the Razors. They can retreat the Chatot because this will bring down the energy cost of that Brave Bird from the Staraptor. It will do 130 damage. That was a huge pull. They were believing in the heart of the cards, and they got exactly what they needed. They also restore the health of the Chatot to 50 before they get an energy onto it. They are going to surely retreat it here, and that is exactly what they do. A smart choice. They did not rush that decision. And with this Barry, they can go on the offensive, bring in the attack cost of this Brave Bird. It will do 20 damage to itself in the process, but 130 damage to wipe the Skuntank off the board, and they take their second point here in Game 4. They are trying desperately to take this to a Game 5. The Skuntank in the bench position now being moved into the active spot. The next point will win Game 4. Will the Rogues lock up this series, or can the Razors take it to a final 5 decider? The Krogunk moved on to the bench. The Poison Gas from the Skuntank, 50 damage onto the Staraptor. They've left it with that poison status condition, bringing it down to 70 health, but it is the Rocky Helmet pulled for the Razors. They've got those Wigglytuffs as well. They can restore 40 health of the Staraptor here. They do get a second energy onto it, as they think of moving the Rocky Helmet onto it as well here. There's the first comforting song, bringing Staraptor up to 90 health. They're taking their time. The second comforting song from the second Wigglytuff, 110 health remaining now for the Staraptor. It's still got that poison status condition. They're still thinking of moving the Rocky Helmet here, but they decide against it. Speaking of Rocky Helmets, the Rogues do pull their own. They do get the Rocky Helmet onto the Skuntank. It can do 50 damage again to the Staraptor, but it will not be enough to wipe it off the board. The second Toxicroak is moved onto the bench. It too has only got 100 health, just like the Skuntank. They're going for the poison gas, but with that, Staraptor has 40 health remaining after the poisoning. This allows the Razors, who are going to pull the Cyclizar, they can get a third energy onto the Staraptor. They go for the comforting song. This is not what teams normally do. They'll normally just go straight for the win condition. If it was there, I think the Razors are playing it ultra safe here. They are taking their time, which usually doesn't happen quite this drastically, but with this Brave Bird, they are going to wipe that Skuntank off the board, and they get their third point as the Fast Days deck gets the win, and it is going to come down to the Bombardment deck going up against the Galactic Admin deck as we have our final table reset to determine our series winner here. One side will become the first member of the Elite Four, the other side will have the opportunity to move on and try and qualify for the Champions game. It is this Bombardment deck. The Fan Rotom into the active spot for the Razors, not the Drapion, the Skorupi into the active spot for that Galactic Admin deck of the Kitakami Rogues. And it is the Baneri being pulled for the Razors, but they do play that Professor's Research. They've got the Lopunny in hand, they get a Barry, and they do get the second Professor's Research. They've also got the Ambipom in hand, and as I saw that Barrier, I was thinking about the Fast Days deck then, but you got to remember there is the Snorlax that also capitalizes from the Barrier as the Rocky Helmet is placed onto the Fan Rotom. The Rogues pull their Stunky, and they have got a Skuntank in hand. They've got a second Skorupi, a Giant Cape, and the Toxicroak. They get a first of 2 required energy onto the Skorupi. The Drapion require 3 energy. They can do 160 damage. They get 4 coin flips. If they get 2 of them, it poisons the opposing Pokemon, but for each heads it does 40 damage as well. And the Razors are going to pull the Team Rocket Grunt. They do think of getting the Lopunny online, but first they're going to play that Professor's Research, their second one of the game, Ambipom and the Pokeball. They can get a basic Pokemon out of their deck as well, and it is going to be revealed to be the Snorlax being pulled from the deck. And they are having a look at their hand, knowing they've got the Barry. They get the Snorlax onto the bench, and they're going to start generating energy for the Snorlax as well. They're leaving the Fan Rotom in the active spot. It can't do damage. It can only blow the Pokemon in the active spot back into the hand of the opposing side as a Krogunk is pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. And it is going to be that Skuntank coming online for the Rogues here as the Skorupi gets its second energy. They desperately want that Drapion on the next card pull as the Krogunk comes online as well. It is the Toxicroak in hand for the Rogues as the Skorupi gets the Giant Cape, taking its health up to 90, and here is the Pierce. 30 damage onto the Fan Rotom, but the Rocky Helmet damage is going to do 20 back to the Skorupi, immediately offsetting that Giant Cape. The Razors do pull an Apom here, taking up that last bench slot, and they do get a second energy here onto the Snorlax. And to try and cause a bit of disruption, they do get the Team Rocket Grunt out, but immediately it is a tail, so there'll be no energy removed from this Skorupi on this occasion. It comes back over to the Rogues. They get a Professor's Research. This will buy them the opportunity to try and get the Drapion. They get another 2 cards. They get the Pokeball. They get the second Krogunk, so still no Drapion in hand for this side. They do play the Pokeball to get the second Stunky, however, as they do have options of what they want to move onto the bench with all their basic Pokemon in hand. They do get energy onto that benched Krogunk as well. Taking their time before going on the offensive, both these sides want to win this final 5th game of this series, the Elimination Final. The first side knocked out of Victory Road. They do go on the offensive with the Skorupi. They still have to contend with the Rocky Helmet though, and the Razors are going to pull their second Apom, but their bench is full at the moment. They can't put any more basic Pokemon out onto the board. They are going to get an energy onto the Fan Rotom. They can retreat it with that one energy they put onto it, moving the Snorlax into the active spot. They do not want to have to contend with a Drapion. They get an Ambipom online as well, and they do play the Barry, bringing that attack cost of the Collapse down to only 2 and 100 damage. They are going to squish this Scorbunny, and they take the first point here in our final game to take that early lead, as again, both these sides, they desperately want to move on. Neither made it into Victory Road last season. Our top 5 teams that crown our 4 Elite Four members and our champion of Season A2. And Snorlax is going to remain asleep after that coin flip here, as the Rogues pull their own Team Rocket Grunt. They could get the energy off the Snorlax here. That would be crucial for the Rogues. They are going to play that immediately. And they get a heads on the first one. They get a heads on the second one. They get both energy off that Snorlax in the active spot. That is fantastic for the Rogues. That is going to buy them some time here. And they do fill up their bench because this group beat down Krogunk. It will get a coin flip for every Pokemon. However, they are thinking of going with the Toxicroak. A very interesting decision. They have the options here of how they want to approach this. They can try and go on the offensive and try and get 80 damage because they'll get 20 for every coin flip, and they get 4 coin flips here. On the Snorlax, they get 1 Tails with the first one, second Tails, third Tails. They get 1 Heads after all that, which is actually the same that Toxic would have done, because it would have badly poisoned the opposing Snorlax, so it would have taken 20 damage in between every turn. So by the time it got back to the Rogues, it would have taken 40 damage, and that Snorlax is now awake as the second barrier has been pulled for the Razors, which means they're going to start setting up this Snorlax once again, one more turn, and they can get another 100 damage off with this Collapse. They send it back over to the Rogues. They do pull the Rocky Helmet. They need to think about how they want to approach this now, as they are going to get an energy onto that second Krogunk, and they're going to retreat the active Krogunk here, moving that second Krogunk into the active spot, and they do evolve it into the Toxicroak. Now they're going to get that poison status, that badly poisoned status condition onto the Snorlax. And this could be crucial here, because if Snorlax is taking double the damage there, it's starting to take effect 20 from the health of Snorlax in between every turn that it makes between sides. The second Snorlax pulled for the Razors, but this Snorlax gets its second energy, and they are going to play the Barry. They will get their second point. They will be 1 point away from bringing this series back and moving on to our minor semi-final, because Toxicroak has been wiped off the board into the discard pile, but not before that Rocky Helmet does 20 damage back to the Snorlax, and the Snorlax has fallen asleep. Status conditions galore at the moment. The Rogues decide to move their Krogunk back into the active spot, and there is that poisoning continuing to afflict Snorlax as it is already awoken. They have flipped their heads. The Rogues need that Toxicroak, and they need it fast. They get a Drapion instead, but the Scorbunny has not been set up. They do get that Stunky onto the bench. They get the Drapion onto the bench as well. It's now online. The group beatdown. They need to flip at least 2 heads here, because that poison will guarantee the elimination of the Snorlax. They get a Tails, 3, 4 Tails, and Snorlax is safe in the active spot at the moment, losing 20 health. Now the Razors, they won't be able to get enough energy onto the Snorlax in time, so they need to think about how they want to approach this, because it will lose 20 health when it comes back over to the Krogunk, but they still get the energy onto the Snorlax anyway. I'm not sure they realized. They must have forgotten that it's badly poisoned, not just regularly poisoned, so it's losing twice as much health in between turns. It has 20 health remaining as it comes back over to the Rogues. They pull their second Drapion. I'm sure they wish they had that much earlier, as the bench Drapion does get its first of 3 required energy, and again they go with the group beatdown, 2 Tails, 3 Tails, but they do get 1 head, so it will be the Krogunk moving that Snorlax over into the discard pile as the Rogues get their first point here in game 5. They're trying to bring this back and hold on. It is the Ambipom though, moved into the active spot for the Petalburg Razors. They do get the Giant Cape. They could get 2 heads flips from this Ambipom, and that will lock up the series right here. They're looking through their hand as well. They've got the second Apom, they've got the Lopunnies. They are going to move the second Apom onto the bench. They move a Lopunny, the jump kick that does 20 damage. And here is the Giant Cape onto the Ambipom, taking its health up to 110 as well. They need to flip 2 heads to ensure the series win right now. This is their opportunity. They get 1. they get 2, and the Petalburg Razors, who took last season's wooden crown, have taken the Kitakami Rogues out of Victory Road, as the Rogues will become our first member of the Elite Four. But it is the Petalburg Razors who will be moving on to our minor semi-final to face the Turffield Ebonies. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.